welcome everybody to the Bards of the Roundtable podcast. We've got a new guest on here that has not been on the podcast. My friend Neo here, Neo Matter from Twitch. You want to go ahead and just kind of explain to people who you are and what it is that you do and where they can find you?
Sure. Hi guys, I'm Neo Matter. Just to briefly touch on my life outside of Twitch, I'm a married father to a beautiful 1-year-old, well, almost 2-year-old baby boy.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. As far as Twitch goes, you guys can find me over on twitch.tv/NeoMatter on any social platforms. You can find me on Twitter as well as Instagram. Both are at NeoMatter3420. And what I primarily play are narrative-driven, story-driven content with a huge emphasis on JRPGs, just because that's what I grew up playing and that's what I'm most attracted to in terms of games, story, and character development.
Like I said, you'll fit right in on the podcast. We all feel the same way, so. Right. So, Tayson, you've been on the podcast before. Everybody knows who you are. Just, let's, just plug in your channel and.
Yeah. Firstly, good to be back. Thank you for having me, and also welcome Neo. I'm sure some of you know, I'm Tayson. I have a gaming YouTube channel where, similarly to Neo, I'm very interested in narrative-driven RPGs, and I focus most of my time thinking about them in various forms. And I love the genre, and I love that it's almost going through some form of a renaissance in a way in recent times. There was this sort of dip during the Xbox 360 and PS3 era. At least you were searching for those games, but to see them come back, there's a great audience of people who to know, yourselves included, and get to have a great time talking about these games. So I look forward to it, this podcast.
All right, and Serge, we had him on last time's podcast. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself and plug in your channel real quick?
Thanks again for having me on, Spoons. I'm SurgemanX. I'm a YouTuber. I have a show on YouTube called Mode 7 where I cover various retro games. I'm currently playing through Super Mario RPG. This could be the next episode, so I'm excited to put that out. I also do scripted reviews and a couple of news videos. So, yeah, that's basically my channel in a nutshell.
Nice. All right, well, introductions are out of the way, so let's go ahead and dive into our first topic of the night. And this is going to be, why is backwards compatibility so important? I feel like with every passing generation, so many people, this is all a feature that they want, but none of the companies really seem, other than Microsoft, I guess I should say, really seem interested in expanding, backwards compatibility and making it easier to play these games. So I just kind of wanted to get everybody's thoughts on why backwards compatibility is so important, and kind of your thoughts on the matter. So, Tayson, let's go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, there are quite a few reasons why I'm very much in support of the backwards compatibility, and for me, it's one of the things that drives me most towards a console, because even today, my preferred consoles, ones like the PlayStation 1 to the GameCube, the games that are on there, and many of which that are still not accessible in any other form. So that brings to my first point, accessibility. There is definitely a huge demand for many games that, you could say, have been pre-existing for a long time, and some are just due to the nature of maybe the development by a specific studio that is currently well known or well received for the games they're making now. For example, Monolith Soft, they're doing fantastic with their recent JRPGs, and it's brought about a huge interest in some of the things that they worked on previously. Unfortunately, those games aren't as accessible. Another reason I think backwards compatibility is important, preservation, ensuring that there is some way to play these games that's going to, lasting, multiple decades and even longer. There is a certain, there's going to be a limitation to how long the consoles that we have that can play them will last. Unfortunately, there are some workarounds that are being developed now in terms of optical drive replacements. But I guess adding on to that in terms of preservation is enhancements, because we've seen like the Xbox Series X, not only are they supporting the preservation of a lot of games, their backwards compatibility, but they're enhancing them and making them, I guess you could say, better suited to being able to be played in ways that aren't as, I guess you could say, easy. So I guess from the standpoint of the visual fidelity, from the controls, even down to just fixing some bugs and glitches pre-existing in some of these older games. So it is a tricky situation for some, because of maybe the viable profitability, but I think it's those things that it's about looking, I guess you could say, I guess I'm not working as someone at any of these companies, so I can't talk on outside of profitability, but I think it's very, very much about looking to the other goals.
Your microphone's cutting out again there, bud.
Is that now?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I guess just pushing that off is just looking beyond the profits, or maybe lack of profits for the backwards compatibility for some, like Sony have sort of mentioned it, and looking at again that long-term preservation and what that can just do for the history of video games.
Turn up the audio a bit here, guys. Sorry. All right. So, a lot of great points there, Tayson, because, I in partly think this is why emulation is so important as well, because there's just so many games lost to the wind we can't play, as they're not accessible like movies. You can't go to Amazon and just buy one for under $20, or, even $60. Some of these retro games are super expensive to get your hands on. So, Neo, what's your thoughts on it?
I think it's kind of a double-edged sword, to be honest with you. While I think that backwards compatibility is important in keeping games alive, like you guys were touching on, like games of the past that, so just to name off one or two, like a game like Crisis Core or Dirge of Cerberus that were, I believe, PSP games that weren't forwarded to, like, you can't get it on a Steam. You have to emulate it or just play it on your respective mobile console. So, like he was saying, it's Tasom, correct? Tasom.
Yeah, Tazen, like Tay.
Cool. Sorry, man.
Probably
should have checked on that earlier.
No, that's all right.
But like Tazen touched on, like it's it's a means of preservation for games and for consoles past that you can't play, or you don't have like readily available to you. Although I would say that Steam has done a fairly good job of updating their library in terms of on PC. Now, that's obviously not going to be something that everybody can utilize. There's a lot of console players that don't have that benefit. But and then on the other hand, I think in order for games and for companies to grow, you kind of have to leave the past where it is if you want to continue to evolve, I guess.
Yeah.
Because if you just keep, I don't know, I guess spinning tires in the same era, like how are you going to progress? Like how are you going to make advances advancements in both graphics or audio, et cetera, you know what I mean? So that's just kind of my take on it.
That's a good point. It's almost like it works well when you, sorry to come in quickly, just almost like you need to find this balance in terms of maybe like sprinkling in some of these older games so that they're, again, not sort of working against that evolution that you've mentioned in terms of both the current gen sort of games that are being produced for graphics and fidelity, and also for, you know, the way that they can tell stories or provide new gameplay experiences.
And I kind of wonder how much cloud gaming could potentially change the landscape of that as well. It's like, I mean, as we kind of move towards this cloud gaming, you know, are we going to see more developers have an interest in putting their back catalogs up for people to, you know, play? Like, especially if they could charge like maybe $1 to $2 or something for like these older games or something like that.
Yeah, because it's tough, like you were touching on, Two Spoons, like, to get your hands on a physical copy of some of these older games, like the price point is fucking ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, and then you have to jump through hoops in terms of like connectivity, like getting it connected to modern televisions or getting it connected to your PC, like the runarounds and the workarounds that you have to do just in order to play the game after you just spent X amount of dollars on it.
That's a very good point. I play all my retro games. The pretty, you could say, specified setup. Like, I've got a nice a nice consumer affordable upscaling device plugged into another one, just so I can get, you know, things output pretty clean on a HD TV. But, you know, even for those who wish to just play it on a CRT, they're also becoming increasingly rare. And yeah, you know, when you mention jumping through hoops, it's interesting because I guess not only in recent times, but also when some of these games were, you could say, somewhat current gen, were a few extra hoops that I had to go through, and I'm sure, you know, many others in various regions of the world, in terms of lack of, I guess you could say, region compatibility. I always had to find a way to get certain copies of games that were never released here ported for extra costs, and then getting my PS1, PS2 and so on odd chip just so I could play that. And I'm sure for people now who wish to play some of these games that aren't available digitally, and again, they've got to try and pay up the costs, difficulty in finding these things, and then, you know, for some of the people in different territories, even the difficulty in even trying to find a way to get their consoles modded. So it's quite a, sometimes it can be a minefield going through backwards compatibility, and so how to best assess concerning games accessible to people now, and sometimes, you know, the benefits versus the costs of doing so.
It's like Nintendo. Nintendo, I feel like every generation always changes how you play the game, and for them trying to, I guess, implement different control options into newer systems, I guess that's such something that maybe isn't possible. Of such as, you know, we don't have Wii games on the Switch, or Wii U games aside from the ports that utilize the touchpad of like the gamepad of the Wii U. So stuff like that, I guess it's tricky to, I guess, keep pushing forward as technology goes.
Yeah, that's a really good point too, because like you said, it almost seems like every generation that Nintendo, for all intents and purposes, does like reinvent the wheel. You know what I mean? You have to play their new console a different way than their last console, and it's like, holy cow, man! Like, how many different ways like can we light a lighter or like roll a wheel? And it's just it always changes every generation with Nintendo.
Yeah. So true.
That's a good point. Nintendo being Nintendo.
I mean, it's working, so I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? In the grand scheme of things.
Switch
Yeah.
stills are doing pretty good, so like evidently they're doing something right this gen.
Yeah, for sure. Very loyal fan base too. I think that has a lot to do with it as well. Like
Oh, most
people
definitely.
just love Nintendo. They grew up with Nintendo, and no matter what Nintendo does, for the most part, like they're all in. They're on board no matter what.
Yeah. I don't know. I
And
think.
Nintendo have these.
Go ahead, Tayson.
You go, Spence. I'm just gonna say Nintendo have this in this interesting situation where, you know, I guess partly based on exclusivity of some of the products they provide, and you know, just sort of that almost cultural and memorable experiences we have in Nintendo from our childhood. There are these times where they make these business decisions that can be quite questionable in terms of certain ways they release games and so on. However, it's like they know that you know how, I guess you could say, topical it could be, or how it could upset people. They know that people will still buy their products, you know, including us. So it's just sort of, they're in this situation where no matter what, people buy games from them, and that's something that you'd say Sony and Microsoft don't have the exact same sort of appeal or loyal fan base as Nintendo does. So yeah, Nintendo are killing it in so many fronts.
Yeah. Serge, we really haven't got to hear too much of your thoughts. Did you want to add anything to that, or?
Another thing, just going off Nintendo, you know, I feel like they're sort of anti-preservation with some of their recent decisions, such as the Fire Emblem game they just announced, how it's going to be limited time release. So stuff like that, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And Sony's thoughts on backwards compatibility also doesn't rub me the right way. So I feel like, like Neo says, it's tricky because in order for technology to move forward, sometimes you need to let go of the past, but at the same time, games are very expensive that from older consoles that aren't available to play on newer stuff, so it becomes tricky at that point.
Yeah. Well, before we jump into the next topic, does anybody have any closing thoughts on that, or?
I think I'm good.
Alrighty, let's dive right into the next topic. So our next topic, we're going to be talking about our gaming flaws inflated. And what I mean by this, guys, is there are so many times where a game gets a ton of hate for sometimes being just a good game, or a game that has a lot of other really great things about it, but there's some gameplay mechanics that aren't received as well as others. One of the big examples that I can really, two big examples I can really hearken to is Final Fantasy VIII, particularly with its junction system. There's a lot of people who tend to think that that game's just kind of broken in terms of the junction system, and it gets a lot of hate. And another one really is Final Fantasy XIII. Final Fantasy XIII definitely has its flaws. It's not a perfect game. It's not even one of the best Final Fantasy games in my opinion, but it still has a certain charm to it, and there's still some things that I enjoy with it, despite the game being so linear. I'm going to let you start this one, Neo Matter, just because you actually recently got a chance to play through one of the examples that I just used, so...
Actually, yeah, thank you. I actually had just recently played through 8, and then after we had played 8, I worked into the 13 trilogy as a whole. 8 was a game that, back in the day, I pre-ordered it from, it was Babbage's at the time, or it was still called Electronics Boutique as well. I think they were both still under like one umbrella. But anyways, so like it was something that I pre-ordered as a kid with the paperback strat, and I just think at the time, because what, it came out in 99. Let's see, 6. So I was 13. I think the junction system, for me at least, it was almost too complex for me to like really like latch onto to figure out exactly what I was doing and how to do it. And in terms of Final Fantasy 13, I think that has to be probably the most divisive like title or entries in all of Final Fantasy, because there's a lot of people that I feel either love it or they hate it. And as I've gotten older, I really like to approach games that I'm either going to replay through or play for the first time with a much more open mind than I did when I was a kid. And it's real easy to sit back and listen to the critics who just bash the game, and then I think people just kind of follow suit. Like they see somebody, and I'm not saying that they did personally, but like say a company like IGN or one of these bigger companies say, nah, the game is shit, like it's awful, blah, 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 this and that. And then people just go, oh, well, you know, IGN said it was shit, so I'm not going to play it. Like, why am I going to give it a chance? Everybody's saying it's garbage. I'm not going to play it. And having just played through all of it, it is probably one of my most enjoyable and favorite playthroughs I think I've undertaken in my entire life. And I think each entry had a very different but almost similar combat system. It was the story and the characters and obviously the soundtrack that really, really pulled me in, and I enjoyed it thoroughly, like start to finish. But like you said, there are some quirks, there are some things that, you know, I didn't particularly care for, but in like the grand, like the overall like scheme of things, I thought it was a masterpiece. And I really, really, really loved it, and I'd encourage people that maybe didn't give it a full chance the first time around to maybe try and stick it out and give it a go. But I know that's not always necessarily going to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, I really think when it comes, as somebody who reviews games on YouTube, you know, I mean, I really think it comes down to objectivity versus subjectivity. You know, we all kind of have those subjective opinions. Like a story's always going to hit me differently than it does somebody else. So like an example that I'll always use is Tales of Zestiria. The game, it's a fairly mediocre game in terms of just you know, the pacing of it and how slow that the game is. But once I got to that ending, that's when the game really took me by surprise, was with its story and how the plot twist just kind of came together to put the final touch on this game. You know, and it's hard because there's so many people who like certain mechanics who don't work. Certain mechanics don't work for them. They just don't like it. So like, especially when you do reviews, you know, how do you bridge the gap between subjectivity and objectivity? You know, objectivity being the actual flaws that the game has, like a janky camera, or, you know, sometimes just mechanics that don't work as best, versus something subjective as, oh, the story didn't connect with me as much as it would have somebody else, or I didn't like this particular character, therefore the game is just bad.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a good example of that is, again, the Final Fantasy 13 trilogy. Just the slight changes in terms of objectivity that they did with the paradigm system. So, like, the one thing that I will always take away from 13 itself was switching paradigms. There was the animation that seemed like it just took far too long, and they kind of bridged that gap in 13 too. They made it far more snappy.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely agree with you there.
Search if you're ever curious. There's a beautiful video done by a guy named Design Docs on YouTube, and he kind of constructually breaks down why so many people had a problem with the linearity in that game. And I mean, it's not just so much in its story or, you know, the linear corridor, and it's just, it really dives down into how, you know, how the progression is so linear, and every aspect of that game feels so linear. So if you're ever curious, I think it's a very good dissection of, the really explaining why people are so torn on that particular, Final Fantasy 13 in particular, because it really kind of takes a look at Final Fantasy 10 and 13 and analyzes them together. And, why two linear games, one gets a lot more complaints for being linear while the other one doesn't. So, Tayson, do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, this is a great examples for this topic as well, because many things you touched on, Neo, that I wholeheartedly agree on. Comes to teen, but just backtracking to FF8 as an example, because that was the first Final Fantasy game I played, and I believe it was also the first console RPG I ever played as well. And flaws can definitely become inflated based on, it's almost like people's thoughts on the game, particularly from, I should say, professional review sources. And now, it's, that bracket has opened up to forms of content creators. People's thoughts can essentially latch onto the game as a tag, and like you were mentioning, Neo, that like by someone hearing that this game wasn't great or so on, then they almost take that belief to themselves without playing the game. And I think another great example in recent times is The Last of Us Part 2. There's a lot of negativity based on that game before it even came out, because spoilers had leaked, and that's a difficult situation because it changes people's perceptions of that game, because they're not even played through the game yet, and they're learning things out context. But I just remember seeing so many people in review comment sections and forums saying, I heard the game was terrible, so I'm not gonna bother playing it. And I think that is I think a lot of inflation can come from that, and it's not to take away that games can be poor in certain aspects, particularly from the objective side. Subjectively, that is really an open field in how someone would enjoy a game if they just gave themselves the opportunity to try it, provided they can afford these games, because the way we perceive a game is very much subjective to not only what we seek to experience in a game, but our previous experiences. They're just so diverse across everyone, and so it's a huge disservice to assume that someone else's subjective thoughts on a game can sort of affect you so much, as opposed to the objective things, which can be a little more universal, like the flaws, mechanics and stuff that you mentioned, Spoon. But Final Fantasy 13 briefly, another thing about, I guess you could say, an inflation in the flaws, yes, even more for that linearity, is it was also the timing of that game. It was released during a time when people were starting to taste quite broad open world experiences that were scaled almost one-to-one. What I mean is not the overworld maps that you experience in some of these classic RPGs, but rather Skyrim-like experiences. And I'm sure it made some people even more adverse to the linearity, and sort of emphasize the linearity of FF13 as a negative aspect to it, when it was a step more linear than FF10, but I wouldn't say it was linear to the point that it was detrimental to the entirety of the game. But my example, I can only just speak for myself, but played that game at a time where it's very, you could say, into or adverse to open world games, because they were just so overwhelming. For me, playing F13 subjectively, it was a very welcoming and enjoyable experience, and
I agree.
linearity also helped me feel like I could experience a story wholeheartedly without any significant divergence towards side quests and so on. And unfortunately, I haven't beaten 13.2 and 13.3, so I can only speak for the first game. But I guess my point in question is that the inflation, I think people, it's important to do this good critical research, understanding of why certain games critique negatively, whether that being a focus on objective issues or on subjective issues.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a large emphasis on things that you can pick out that are quite subjective, then don't let that hinder your desire to try that game.
Yeah.
If you previously did have an interest.
What was that, Jason? You cut it. Oh, sorry, Serge. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I feel like with Final Fantasy 13 in particular, I think a lot of the criticism came from the fan base, as we're used to more open experiences. I would say newcomers to the franchise, maybe Final Fantasy 13 was their first game, or maybe that was their first RPG. I feel like they wouldn't view those as flaws necessarily, only because they didn't experience that with the prior games. But if we go to Final Fantasy 8, that was one of the first couple of Final Fantasies I played. I was about 10 or 11 when that came out, and the junction system killed that experience for me. But it wasn't until years later, when I got older, I gave it another chance, and I was able to understand the junction system, and it became one of my more favorable games in the series. Mm-hmm. So I really think the flaws of games depends on the person. What you may find not great, someone else may love, and vice versa. So it was very subjective in that aspect.
So, agreed. I had a similar experience actually with Final Fantasy Tactics. It wasn't so much I hated the game, but it was just as a kid, there was two things as a kid that really bugged me. And it's funny because one of those things that bugged me as a kid is one of my favorite things about it, but just the whole strategy thing behind Tactics really confused me as a child. I had a really hard time grasping that concept of moving your characters around on that little grids and having to place them in certain areas to do attacks. And the other thing that bugged me as a kid was how dark the story was. It was such a contrast to other Final Fantasy games at the time. And now looking back, that's probably one of my favorite things about Tactics, was how its story felt so different. But just real quickly, I want to briefly cover something Tayson brought up with The Last of Us Part 2. Because I've heard the argument people always make that a story cannot be objective, that a story cannot be objectively flawed. And as someone who writes and understands how to write like effective plot twists and things like that, and there are ways that you can objectively make a bad story. And just in particular with stories don't tend to do well when you, like that scene in The Last of Us, without spoiling the context of it for people who still haven't played it. There's a clear distinction between doing something for shock value and then doing something for story reasons. And I think from what I've heard with The Last of Us Part 2 is how, in my opinion, it was kind of how they paced it. There needed to be a little bit more build up in that area. But take a look at The Last Jedi from Star Wars. Spoilers for The Last Jedi for anybody who hasn't seen it yet. Snoke's just out of the blues killed. There's no lead up, nothing in that movie really had any hints as to what was going on. It's like plot twist, plot twist, plot twist, plot twist, plot twist. It's like, okay, you lose somebody in that. Final Fantasy VII, there's the whole spoilers for Final Fantasy VII, I guess. So come back or skip ahead if you don't want it spoiled. But the whole reveal with Cloud and his whole ordeal of how he the whole crux of Nibelheim. That's what the story focuses so much on, is what really happened in Nibelheim, and how the game just leaves this trail of breadcrumbs to foreshadow who Cloud was this entire time. And then once it hits that moment, he takes off that helmet and you realize that he was the Shinra trooper in Nibelheim the entire time. And then you're able to go back and go, oh my gosh, the game was hinting at this. And I think that's what makes such an effective plot twist, is you almost have to construct it in a mystery where it's like leading up to those events. Another great example I could think of would be Harry Potter and the whole Snape debacle, just because if you take a look at the whole series and what went on, there were so many things leading up to why Snape was so crucial to Harry's story, without getting into spoilers of that. But yeah, so stories can be objective, but objectively flawed, but it does also depend on, as I said, what you're feeling at that time too, because stories do speak to people very differently. It's very hard to dissect a story for that reason.
Yeah, you've mentioned definitely some great points about the objectivity in effective ways of telling a story, and yeah, you're definitely right there. I remember hearing into a podcast by Resident Arc, a fantastic podcast that were talking about the effectiveness of this. And
Your microphone again, bud.
there we go. How's that now?
There we go. That's better.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, they were talking, they brought up some fantastic points about effectiveness of twists and the ways that they can be done well. And a plot twist isn't something that, be something that when you experience it, it's at a point where it can't be something, it's got to be something that it's not so obvious everyone can figure it out being up until it or prior to the actual twist. Something that is not so surprising that there is no evidence or suggestion that it could happen. It's got to be something that when you discover it, it's almost like this aha moment as well, where either you can just recall little things that could have suggested it, or you go back on a second viewing or playthrough and then you can pick up on some of these, I guess you could say, nuanced bits of storytelling, sort of clue you in on what it's leading to. And Final Fantasy VII is a great example of a game that does that. I think the experience playing that game a second time is very much enhanced after you're aware of, you could say, I guess, Cloud is. And the same goes with even effective ways of telling stories with foil characters. I guess you could say that these characters like Jar Jar Binks and so that are not only in some form, I guess you could say in obvious sense they play quite a what's the best word to describe it? Adverse role. They can sound quite silly and so on. There's usually a purpose to them if they're done properly to forward the narrative, and there are some cases, Joe Binks being an example, where many ways that they don't suit that, and that can sometimes be why those characters don't stick, not just because of the character's personality, but rather the way they don't drive the plot forward. Last of Us is definitely an example where I think I'm going to say me personally, the things that I experienced in the game were well built up. However, that's just because it wasn't too long before that I'd played through the first game, so I wasn't someone who had gone from this big, I guess you could say, gap in time. But other than that, yeah, it's a very complex because there's definitely this objectivity and subjectivity.
Dude, imagine if Jar Jar Binks didn't hand over executive powers to Palpatine. Like,
oh my gosh.
Like, just imagine how different the narrative would have been.
Oh my gosh.
It's really crazy. Just that one point alone. Like, you talk about how Jar Jar Binks is just a shit character. A lot of people think that he is. Bro, he had one of like the most pivotal like story like elements run through his character. Like, he set things in motion by just being like, all right, Palpatine, I'm gonna give you the reins. You're good to go. He's like, cool, thanks, Jar Jar.
So true. That was in Attack of the Clones, right? When he did that.
Yeah.
I remember how like people hated that film just because they were just so happy he was gone, and then he comes back and he just makes everything worse.
But
I think
it's a great point, like what Spoon said too. Like Palpatine, Snoke in the newer movies. Like, I honestly can't think of personally how he even really like pertained to the story. He was just like this, almost like this villainous filler, like a filler character. You know what I mean? Like, what purpose did he serve?
Yeah,
very true. They did write in.
Yeah. Go on, Jason.
They did write in his purpose after they obviously wrote in. They created the story for Episode 9. However, those things are all afterthoughts, so it doesn't sell off as well. And they'd even incorporate it into the actual movie, but rather into if it's the novel or tie in sort of. But it was Snoke was designed by Palpatine as a tool for
like to convert Kylo to the dark side.
But
not purely to convert him, but rather to be the final test for him to, you could say, pass, in the sense that he's able to, what's the word? The one who knows him so much, yet he can deceive that person, and that's almost the final stages of being able to, you could say, turn to the dark side. But that fell on its side because even after that, Kylo, like, he always still felt like he was just this wavering character. There was nothing definitive about after it happened. It was just a total mess, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is with Star Wars, though, too, the prequel trilogy, is there was no game plan. That was the trilogy's biggest flaw, is there was just kind of a relay race. All right, let's hand it off to the next director and do what you want with it. So they needed an arc. They really did. I really stand by that there was more to Snoke's character than what we originally got, but that's just me.
Did all three films, I think we would have seen a different outcome. I think when Rian Johnson stepped in, he decided, I'm gonna do what I want. You're not gonna like it? That's too bad.
Yeah.
And Abrams basically had to repair damage control what Rian Johnson did, and we got the mess of the last episode 9.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But, does anyone have any additional thoughts on that? On this topic? I think we've kind of covered it pretty good.
That, and just one last thing about it too, just as I keep reading over it, like, our game's flaws and inflated, I almost feel as though nowadays, well, actually no, I guess just in like the history of gaming, like, there could be flaws in a game that just totally over polarize the entire game itself. Like, it could be one thing that people just hone in on like a friggin' bullseye, and it almost is bigger than the game itself. Does that make sense? Like what I'm trying to say? Like they focus on the thing that they dislike, or a lot of people dislike, and it like overshadows the entire game itself as a whole. Like the rest of the experience could be wonderful, but that one thing that everybody's honed in on, like that's all they think about, and it's almost bigger than the entire game, and that's crazy to me.
Yeah, Final Fantasy
It's like the
Final Fantasy 13's very much that same way. That's an exemplified. That's a great example of what you're just saying there, Neo, because everybody talks about how linear the game is. That's always what you hear, but it's like you say to these people, did you play through the game as a whole? Because I can respect the people's opinions who have played through the game as a whole and took the time to beat it. those people who said, "Oh, I played through the first chapter. It was too
Spoons, you're breaking
linear."
up big time. I don't know if it's just me. Sorry.
Too.
That's weird.
Hear it too. Yeah, Spoons, you might need to do the same as me and start the audio engine. The voice meter.
Okay, give me a sec. All right, you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, indeedy.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Weird.
I just don't want to miss like any points that you're making
Yeah.
or things that you're talking about because breaking up.
Yeah, what I said, Final Fantasy 13 is a prime example of that because you've got so many people who focus on the linearity alone. Oh, the linearity's so bad, and I can get behind that. But what I said there towards the end was I think people inflate that so much. Like, one of the things is like, did you criticize the game? Did you play the game all the way through? Did you experience the game all the way through? Because I can respect someone's opinion who says, hey, it's linear and I got, really far into the game or beat it. But these people who are just like, oh, I played the first chapter. It's linear and boring and stupid. It doesn't give it a fair shot.
Yeah, like it overshadows what I think is an incredibly strong story, like in very, very well-built characters too, you know what I mean? To not to just be like, nope, linear, I'm all set. First chapter, it was garbage, donezo. It's like, oh, you're doing yourself such a disservice. And it's not just with 13, it's with a lot of different games. Like if there's something that's super polarizing, they're like, nah, can't do it, all done. It's like, oh, but dude, it's like you're ripping you're not giving yourself a chance to experience something that could be really, really good story-wise.
Honestly, it's like with me, Breath of the Wild falls into that category. I just can't get past the weapon durability. It kills the game for me entirely.
I hated that too.
Yeah, it's so bad. I really want to love Breath of the Wild, but I just can't bring myself to.
Like, I got Master Sword, and I was absolutely petrified to overuse it because I was afraid the fucking thing was going to shatter on me. And it's like, oh, great, there it goes. Like, why am I late then?
No more Master Sword in Zelda. Wonder what weapon they're gonna have to go find the Force Sword to slay Ganon next time.
Like, holy crap, man. It's like, but yeah, I'm right there with you, Serge. Like, oh, God, like, I can understand like a stick. Sure, stick's durability is gonna be crap, but some of these like ancient weapons that you would get, it's like, dude, like you swing, like you can't even get through like one mob without the thing being like, uh-oh, durability's almost up. And you're like, oh, you're kidding me, dude. Like I've hit it like 3 times.
Hope Breath of the Wild 2 fixes that.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into our next topic because I kind of feel like both of our conversations have already started hinting towards this, but I really want to talk about our graphics hurting video games. And I'll give we talked about this before we went live, but I'll give the audience the idea behind kind of what sparked this is because one of my favorite RPGs of all time is Xenogears. I absolutely love that game. And there's such a complex story, lore, history, narrative behind it, and even the decision of the game to make that into what Disc 2 was, a very slow driven narrative push. It really made people feel like Disc 2 was dragging. And a lot of that came down to the developers not having time to finish the game because they had to teach people how to use a new engine and things like that. And it kind of got me thinking, what could a AAA studio do with something of, these older engines, or if they weren't focusing so much on trying to create these beautiful 3D models and these beautiful landscapes and, just return to something. I'm not saying, well, maybe even 16-bit, but maybe go back and, create a game in like the style of Suikoden and things like that. It kind of made me stop and think, could they really expand these games and make them that way and make them more incredible, and another thing is we've got games like that are all about choice and stuff, but a lot of games have really struggled to kind of change things up and make your choices feel like they're affecting the world. There's been some games that have done it better than others, but we're talking we're talking about, getting people into letting them almost like a Dungeons and Dragons feel, if that makes sense. Like imagine a narrative that just kind of changed depending on what you did, and it like really affected it. So I mean, it's just some thoughts that were running around in my head. But does anybody have any thoughts on that, or you want to? Actually, Serge, you want to take this one and talk about that?
It's tricky to say because, as technology improves, you would think games would also improve in turn, which for the most part, most have. But then when you have games like, Fallout 76, Mass Effect Andromeda, which is a game about choice, they fall flat. And then you look at indie games that are kind of doing the same thing, but a little bit better with a lower budget. And it goes to show, just because you have the AAA game with all these dollars behind it doesn't necessarily make a better game.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of like what we touched on too before we went live, was a game like Octopath Traveler. Like, it's that 16-bit sprite, but it's almost like modern. Like, it's like a modern take on it. You know what I mean? Like, it just looks so good visually. It's like they transplanted a game from the Super Nintendo and they put it into like a current gen like console. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just looks so good. And if they could find like a kind of a balance there, some sort of happy medium to go off of, instead of like what Spoon said about trying to just make these absolutely perfect 3D models and stuff that people just, I don't know, not get behind fully all the time, really.
I mean, like, one of the things that I always think about, God of War on the PlayStation 5 is absolutely beautiful. I absolutely love the look of that game. And one of the things that really surprised me when I was playing it was when you hit that snow area and you start walking around, you can see their footprints in the snow. When they walk, it looks like it's kicking up the snow. It was a really beautiful touch. I'm like, wow, that is really amazing that graphics are able to do that. But then again, how much work went into trying to make that snow do that? Was it really necessary? Was the game going to be any better by just having that
how many
visual
resources,
effect?
how many assets did they use just to make like footprints in a snow?
Yeah.
Like in snow.
It's like, I always remember hearing that story about the Batman Arkham game when Batman Arkham Asylum was happening. There was one guy who worked tirelessly for 2 years to get Batman's cape right in that game. Like, that was his entire job, was to make Batman's cape function.
It's like, good grief, man. Like, you allocate so much time and so much money to just making sure the cape works properly or looks good.
Mm-hmm.
It's nuts.
So, I mean, I get technical issues exist, but again, I think there's so much emphasis put on, wow, this game did this, or this technical aspect did this, or this character's hair clipped through the cape, and, or something like that. And it takes away, I think, from what games could be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's kind of like what we touched on at the beginning of the podcast was, how do you grow as, say, a studio to create new games if you're still allocating assets and time and resources to making games backwards compatible? I guess that was like the other side of that double-edged sword I kind of touched on earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Do you have any thoughts on it, Tayson?
It's definitely...
Your microphone again.
Is that now?
There we go. Yeah.
Okay. It's definitely interesting in how I guess people's this push for realism and stuff, or the pressure it's creating that is something that comes from both what developers produce, but also pressure from consumers. And I guess we can all speak of as people who enjoy JRPGs and the diversity that exists within them, especially now that some of the best games out there in the JRPG sphere. Graphically, are not cutting edge in the sense of realism, just in sense of the art style, the artistic sort of direction that they go in. For example, Octopath is a very, a great unique example of modernization of, the 16-bit,
Right.
and how well done that was. And even going into 3D, for me, I think of the perfect, just going to call it my happy medium in terms of how a 3D game look and tell a great story and have great gameplay is the Trials of Mana remake. It's a nice polished sort of you could almost call it that got a stylized 3D to it that is not hardware pushing. It's not pushing a sense of realism, but there's a great game to experience in that. And then you have your God of Wars and so on that seem to do it all. They can push the graphics and the fidelity and the realism and tell an incredible story and sound design and everything. But I think it is a bit unrealistic of us. I'm just going to say us as like a single community of gamers that, there are a lot of people that really harbor in on, I guess, on negativity in terms of something not being up to their standard. And this is as just someone who's purchasing a product when there's so much more to a game. Like you were mentioning, like all that work on a cape, and potentially no one could notice it, or there could just be one person who notices that it's not good enough, like it doesn't look good enough if they didn't put that effort into it, and then it creates this entire argument that I find is somewhat nonsensical. A great example is the Spider-Man puddle scenario that was going on.
Yes.
Dude, you want to talk about an entire group of gamers like revolting? They're like, you showed in the preview that the puddle was there and the reflection was great, and then we got the game and there was no friggin' puddle. It's like, bro, it's a puddle we're talking about here. Like put down your pitchforks and your torches, please. Like, chill out. There's so much more to the game than the reflection in a puddle.
Exactly, yeah.
Adding on to what you were saying. Go ahead. Sorry, Tayson.
No, I was just going to say that example really sums up my thoughts on how irrational we can be in a demand for realism, and how that can stifle, the way we seek out games based on how they look. And it's down to such a minute details that affects it the way future games are developed, because it's almost like developers have to focus so finely on some of these things that really don't matter as much as people make them out to be. And it can create this bad press for their game when really it's something so minute. So I love when JRPGs or even other games like Super Giant games, all the games that they create, Transistor, Bastion and so on, they go for their own unique style, and they sort of exit that sphere of being critiqued on certain things and can create more of a game that is true to their design and intention without having a controversy about a lack of realism or polish the visuals of it, because they're games that can't be compared to real life in terms of how they look. So it's a tricky balance to find.
I've been playing. Sorry, go ahead, Neo.
No, I was just to kind of add on. It's like, just imagine how difficult it is to work or to be a studio that tries to cater to everybody. Like, you think it's difficult learning to tie your shoes? Try being this mass company that's producing this game for billions of people across the world and trying to cater to each and every one of them.
exactly.
Like, it's got to be absurd, man. There's so much pressure there.
Yeah, I was going to add, I've been playing through, I started playing through Ys 8, and, last Ys game that I need to play, and it's interesting because I've heard a lot of people say, oh, this game looks like shit. I don't like the way that this game looks. The game's graphics aren't that great, and I think it looks fine. I think for the engine and Falcom's budget and what they were able to achieve, they made a very beautiful looking game. The character models are all right. There's some things you kind of realize, like some of the animations, like when they move, it's not as smooth as it is. Like, if like someone's laying down and they get up, you can kind of see like the a little bit there, but it doesn't really hurt the game at all. And it's like just kind of everyone said, it's this small subset of people like, oh, this is so immersion breaking. It doesn't look realistic. And, games don't need to look realistic per se. So.
Yeah, I think if games just look, not to say good enough, but they look pleasing on the eye, not necessarily super detailed or very articulate, I think it's fine, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
Any additional thoughts on that?
Not that I can really think of.
All right, so kind of going along with this subject, we're going to segue into our next talking point. But should the Final Fantasy series scale back its development, or not focus so much on cutting edge graphics and making the games be these almost on par with cinematography? I guess you could say, like being like the standouts of each generation. A lot of it feels like, in a lot of ways, Final Fantasy's always had development issues because of that. Final Fantasy 13 was delayed so much because of Square Enix trying to work on the Crystal Tools engine, and that caused problems. That was part of the reason Versus 13 got transformed into Final Fantasy 13, because Final Fantasy 15, because the Crystal Tools engine couldn't handle, the open world aspects that they were trying to go for with Versus 13. And then the Luminous engine had so many different problems, and Final Fantasy 15, even the course throughout its development, saw so many different changes. So it really, Square Enix is so focused on making Final Fantasy look so cutting edge that even the higher ups in Final Fantasy, before the development of 15, goes, yeah, 15's got to sell, I want to say it was like 4 million copies, or they were just going to shelve the Final Fantasy franchise entirely after that and not even make any more games in the franchise. And I heard some other YouTubers actually talking about this as what actually kind of sparked it. But someone said, what if Square Enix was to kind of go back and create more something akin to like a stylized version of like Persona, where, the graphics aren't as intensive, or they're more animated, they're not so much of a focus on this realism aspect. Do you think the series could, in some ways, retain? I don't want to make it sound like the whole series as a whole is bad, because it's not. The modern entries, I enjoy them for what they are. I had my critiques with Final Fantasy 15, but do you think they could really rekindle that older feeling that Final Fantasy games had if they weren't so focused on creating cutting-edge graphics? You want to start us off on this one, Neo?
Sure, I was just going to say, I think that you'd get a ton of pushback from the fan base if they were to kind of change course in terms of graphical fidelity. You know what I mean? Like, they've made it a point with each new entry in the series that they take almost leaps and bounds if it's not within the same framework, a la the 13 trilogy, but like they've always had this history of like the next game that gets put out, like graphically they've done something newer, bigger, and better. And I think if they just change the overall look of it completely, they would just get huge pushback, like more headache and hassle than anything else.
I think Square Enix's biggest problem, or at least what I've seen going along with what you've been saying, is Square, I think Square has a hard time trying to constrain with what they have to work with. I think they bite off more than they can chew with trying to make these expansive worlds, and I don't like Final Fantasy 15 as much as that game's good. I feel like the open world aspect, they didn't utilize that enough to really expand the game's lore and story as much as they could have. Then again, that might have been a developmental thing to try and get them out as well. But honestly, I kind of, going along with this, I kind of think Square Enix using the Unreal Engine for Final Fantasy VII and, you know, kind of using these same using those engines, you know, might take away from them having as many issues because they're not having to work out these kinks, things like that. Metal Gear Solid was another one that had development issues with its engine, which is why 5 took so long to come out with the Fox engine.
It's like we talked about earlier with Nintendo, like every generation reinventing the wheel. It's almost as if Square does the same thing with a new Final Fantasy entry. Like they have to reinvent the wheel. They have to do something, again, like what I touched on earlier, like bigger and better and like new that nobody else is doing. And it, in some cases, sometimes almost hurts them as opposed to helping them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, and Final Fantasy's always been constantly evolving. Let's not pretend that it hasn't. I mean, even through battle mechanics and stuff, that's part of the reason the ATB system came into effect into 4 was because Final Fantasy 3 got rid of the job class system, and Sakaguchi wanted to make sure that, you know, there was something new coming to it to wrangle in players and not make them be like, oh, well, we want the job system back. And so
I feel like Square has been developing big budget Final Fantasy games for so long. The moment a mainline Final Fantasy doesn't live up to the fans' expectations now, they'll receive a lot of backlash. However, as we've seen with World of Final Fantasy, which is one of my favorite Final Fantasies to come out in a long time, you know, they can do stuff like that, and I still think you can please a certain fan base who wants maybe a more traditional experience, something that kind of is reminiscent of the past. Because as we keep going forward with technology, it seems like Square is going to try to go bigger and outdo what they've done previously.
Mm-hmm. And Shot504 in chat says, I mean, look at how big Final Fantasy XI was, and those graphics weren't all that. And I mean, that's really true. They weren't amazing, but I mean, the game was still widely popular. So.
11 is love, man. I spent most of the summer of my sophomore year in high school in my basement in my lazy boy on my PS2 with my external keyboard and my controller playing Final Fantasy 11. Like,
nice.
Tayson, do you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so just before I go on, I have to leave in 4 minutes, so apologies to everyone in advance, but I'll get my thoughts on this topic before I go. And it's a great point you mentioned about World of Final Fantasy. Like, it really shows that, you know, you can get a Final Fantasy game in a stylized fashion visually and very well received. And I think in terms of the mainline series, I can see it's very difficult for them to go backwards, or I should say sidestep, because they've almost, with FF15, they almost shoehorn themselves to this realistic and maybe even open world setting for the future of the mainline series. And I think part of that is, you know, not only did they use FF15 as like this preview display of the Luminous engine, but also, you know, I think it worked against them that they had like you could say announced a version of that game back in 2007 or so as Versus 13. It was almost like it was a salvage attempt to, I guess you could say, ensure that game still came out in some form. And I think it was because originally that, you know, it was shown off as this like action combat system and it seemed quite different to the Final Fantasies we had seen, and whether that was at the time, being showcased as a spin-off. So, I think many of us at that time were like, oh, it's a little spin-off action RPG style Final Fantasy. But to have to salvage it and bring it into the mainline series has created new expectations. They went with the realism, they went with the action RPG, which is more common now. So I guess, it's almost made it even more difficult to go back to, we'll just say like a turn-based style in the mainline series. Then, they sort of pushed an open world setting that was, you could say in some form was shown off in Versus 13, or at least there was an open linearity showing, some large fields that the characters were fighting in. It makes me wonder if that game was never revealed back in 2007 or so on. They went for a never before seen FF15. That may have looked like, if that may have looked different, would have had a more stylized aspect, would have kept the form of the turn-based that we'd seen up until then. Would it have maybe even taken something more on from FF11 and 14, have a bit of like this this hybrid system that we see in like those games in Xenoblade Chronicles? But I guess we won't know. However, I'm glad that we have seen spin-offs of Final Fantasy, and that allow them to creatively do something different and not receive the same sort of what's the word? I want to say harassment. I want to say the same,
like a backlash almost.
Yeah, that's a bit of a way of saying it. It's going to be interesting to see what we could see in the spin-off area. I would have loved to have seen a sequel to Type 0. Tabata left, so I'm not sure how that will go. If there's another team that will pick that up, but I'm excited to see maybe what new spin-off Final Fantasy we can see. However, for now, I'm glad to see the team FF14 work on 16, because the visual style is slightly different, and maybe they can get away with it looking a little different because of how well received 14 was, and it doesn't have the same realism as Dean was trying to go for, but we are going to a new generation of systems, so that's like, I can't be strong in my words there, because we haven't really seen how everything is truly going to look going into the next generation. But yeah, tricky, because we're seeing this with lots of other games too. A lot of other series that are just bringing out new versions or new games and almost shoehorning himself into the style of the previous one, but just making it thinner and better, opposed to making it different.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, Tayson. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good to chat to all of you. Nice to meet you again, Neo, and I'm sure.
Pleasure to meet you too, bud. Thank you.
Again soon.
Yeah, I hope so, man. For sure.
Yeah, let me know, Spoons. Yeah, definitely great to catch up, Serge. But yeah, take care, everyone. Stay safe.
You too.
You too, man. Be good.
Later, man.
Awesome. See you, everyone. Later.
So, real quick, does anyone want to add anything to, wait a minute. Shot says here, Streets of Rage was a classic throwback that looked aesthetically pleasing and was great. A throwback to the old series. I agree. They really found a way to modernize that style and made it look really, really cool. So,
yeah,
Streets of
absolutely.
Rage was great. The fourth one.
I haven't played it yet because money, but it's definitely
Money
on
or
my
not.
list. Yeah.
Imagine being able to make money in the real world as you do in a video game. It's like, I just sold this hat. I just got $50 for it, and I just found it on the ground.
I went outside and stepped on a rat.
Yeah.
And found some gold.
100.
But, I mean, just going back to it, I think, like, Square Enix needs to find a happy medium between making graphics cutting edge and telling great stories. And I feel like I don't know. I almost feel like in some ways the story comes first, or has come first with Final Fantasy, and then the graphics were built around that, and they've had to make major cuts. So it'll be interesting to see what Final Fantasy 16 is going to be able to do, because a little bit of that trailer, it does look like that they've got something going there. So I want to see more from 16.
I love how it looks just in that preview alone. It's something very akin to like what 14's graphics are. Mm-hmm. And I really like whatever engine it was that they used in 14, because I love how it looks.
Yeah. Well, anything else on this topic, guys, or should we jump into our next one?
You guys pretty much summed it up pretty good.
All right. So our next topic we're going to be talking about is CD Projekt Red crunch. It's kind of out of the news a little bit, but it's something that I've wanted to get other people on a podcast and talk about and kind of talk off of. But, you know, I honestly, I think there's been a lot of blow up with this from a lot of things that kind of came out. I mean, all right, I'm just going to come out and say it. Jason Schreier blows everything up. He's not a very good person. And he has done some justice with talking about crunch with some other things, but I kind of feel like he went too far with this. Like there was this whole argument between Game Informer, him and this other lady who had sources that came out and said, oh yeah, well, you know, there was something that they decided on a company to do, you know, work that extra 6 days a week for what was it, till release November 19th, to make sure that game was there. And, you know, just a lot of people on the development team were so scared to say that the game had gone gold because they were afraid of getting the backlash in that. And, you know, it's just, I don't know. As someone who has a job where I work weekends, or every other weekend, or sometimes every Saturday, you know, I guess it's not that big of a deal to me. I mean, it's just, it's part of living. Like, and you've got, especially if you have a family to, you know, to provide for, that little bit of extra money, you know, goes a long way. You got any thoughts on this, Serge?
No, as someone who also has a full-time job, 40 hours a week, not including overtime, yeah, I get it. You know, you gotta do what you gotta do sometimes. I think, as far as crunch goes, if people are voluntarily doing it, not being forced, I don't really see it as a big deal versus maybe someone getting forced to do 20 hours extra a week. You know, and I think CD Projekt Red, they're more on the side of, you know, not like Take-Two and what Rockstar has done. I just think it was blown way out of proportion. Mm-hmm. I think if people want to do it, that's their decision. You know, if they don't have a gun pointed at their head, I don't see no harm, no foul.
I mean, you know, even going so, it's just like forcing, you know, even if overtime's forced, it's like in my job, we don't really have a choice. We just kind of have to work it. I mean, we have a choice by I can quit that job and go do something else, but then again, I'd take a significant pay cut too. So, I mean, that
is also very true, yeah.
Yeah. What's
like
your thoughts on it?
Nobody's keeping you there. If you don't want to do it, then there's the door. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
In that sense, and that's a... yeah, sorry to just hop in so briefly. Had to step away real fast. But just my thoughts real quick on it are like what Serge had said. It's like, yeah, I work 40 hours. I had a job where I was working 60 hours a week, man. Mandatory. So if somebody has to work an extra 5 or 10 hours, I mean, if it's not pulling teeth, like if it's something that you enjoy, then I think there might be a little bit of a case for it. But if it's like you're not enjoying it, you're like, say your personal life is suffering from it in terms of like your family or things of that nature, then yeah, I can see where them putting a crunch on would be kind of a problem. Mm-hmm. But and then again, if you don't want to do it, there's a door. Smell you later.
Yeah,
like,
and
we can substitute somebody in to do your job for you.
I mean, I put in I put in 100. It's not uncommon for me with my job to put in 100 hours every 2 weeks, but just because sometimes the needs for that, and there's times where throughout the week I could work 5 hour days, 10-hour shifts, even 6-hour days, 10-hour shifts, get 60 hours a week. And I mean, it just happens. And I guess part of it too is I feel like, it, in a lot of ways, it's made me appreciate my time more. Like it makes me plan to spend more time with my wife and my family. And, so I mean, you do make sacrifices. Maybe you don't get as much time to do your leisure activities as you want to, but I mean, I feel like that's just part of growing up and becoming an adult too.
100%. That's just, that comes with being an adult. You sometimes have no choice. You have your family to support, children, pay bills. It's just how life goes.
Yeah, that's the thing about bills, is that nobody pays for them, like, for you. I mean, unless you got a sugar daddy or somebody on your you're on somebody's bankroll. But you know what I mean? Like, yeah, man, if you have responsibilities, you have a mortgage, you have rent, if you want to buy a fucking video game, man, you have to have money. And to get money, you have to have, some form of work, right? Yeah. If in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly.
And, I mean, I don't know. It's just, there's, like, someone said on Twitter, or not, and I'm not going to say who it was. Someone put on Twitter that, it's people who sit there and say that, oh, I work overtime all the time. We should, you should be looking to better your life. You should be looking for, it's, how'd they say that? That's, there's not very many, like, it's uncommon to sometimes even work a job that's 40 hours a week. And I'm just like, I've always, my dad's always had to find a job that's been 40 hours a week. And, sure, you could take a job that gives you less hours, but I mean, when you're making $15 an hour in some of these factory jobs and stuff that you do, I mean, that's damn good money.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like, for myself personally, it was like the job I used to have where I was pulling like between 50 and 60 hours a week mandatory. It was having such an adverse effect on my home life and, the renter upstairs in between the ears, if you know what I'm talking about. Like, and it was not good for me, which is why I had to make the change.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the thing is, it's just, you got to do what you got to do. And
yep.
I think what really made a lot of people frustrated about Schreier's article with this is it wasn't really a big deal. I think he blew it way out of proportion, and it reflected negatively on the actual crunch within the video game industry that's happening. The people who are working 16-hour days and pulling 18-hour shifts and getting 4 hours of sleep. It kind of minimalized those cases we need to be taking a look at, or like with the Anthem's development, where people actually had to take a break from work because of mental exhaustion.
Yeah, and I think that's also, like, it's a problem when things are reported, like, on Twitter or online. It's so tough, like, in today's day and age, that text on the internet gets so taken out of context because there's no emotion behind it. It's literally letters that create words, that create sentences, that create paragraphs. You know what I mean? And if you can't put any sort of like feel or emotion behind it, like, sometimes it can be taken incorrectly, or how it's, like, not intended to be taken.
Yeah. And, it also comes down to, who did you interview, too? Did you find that one grumpy employee who just absolutely hates his job and hates his life? Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, I have my days where I grumble, and, I mean, I'm not going to say I love my job, but, it's not a bad job either. but I mean, there's just some days where work just sucks. Like, you know, I work in a factory making food and sauce spills on the floor, and then we have to have the kitchen, and then the kitchen, you know, where I work, we have to make more sauce. And I mean, it just puts in longer hours for us, and it's just, you know, it can grind on you. So
I'm used to pulling in sometimes 16, 17-hour work shifts, you know, a day.
Yeah, it's rough, man. It's rough on you physically and mentally. Sometimes more of one or the other.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, I mean, again, I don't know. If it sucks that it's such a polarized, like, it became such a polarizing piece, and it put such a negative shine on, like, CD Projekt Red, I guess, in terms of like, oh, look at them, they're forcing people to stay at work because, and like, I just think it was just blown way out of proportion, man. Like, it's not at all. I can't think of the right way to phrase it, but like, it happens more often than it's reported, man. Like, it happens often. I can guarantee it. I don't work in the video game industry, but if it's like any other job, there are times where, if need be, you got to work extra to get the job done.
Yeah, I think I put on Twitter on one of the comments or said, where's Schreier's articles about me in my overtime. So, yeah. But, you know, I think we pretty much got this covered. I mean, I don't really have much to say other than, you know, keep doing what you're doing, CD Projekt Red, and, you know, I'm hoping Cyberpunk's a success for you guys. I am really looking forward to playing that game, so.
Same.
Yeah,
same.
But let's, anyone have anything they want to add, or should we jump into our last topic?
I'm good.
Alrighty.
Yeah, I think we covered it pretty well.
All right, so let's, last topic we're going to talk about is that new Sony update that came up, update 8.0, and the whole thing of Sony now recording chat or allowing users to record chat. There's been some other interface issues and stuff. They've kind of changed. The update took away private parties and things like that, and it's kind of made adding people to a party a lot more difficult than it needed to be, so a lot of people are rightly pissed. But what I wanted to focus in mainly on was how people are... lost my train of thought. What is your guys' takes on the voice chat being recorded?
Serge, it's all you, my guy.
Boy, you know what? Back in the days of the Xbox 360, I used to always go on party chats. That would be my main form of communication with my friends, both you know, in real life and you know, YouTubers. But, you know, as the years gone by, I quickly, you know, drifted away from console chatting features, and I use stuff like Skype and Discord now. So for me personally, this doesn't affect me too much. Really don't have too much of an opinion on this, but I think it's kind of interesting to see where Sony has taken this and how other companies may adopt these features as well into their chatting systems.
It's just so strange because it was just so fucking out of the blue too. Like, it was just out of nowhere.
Yeah, completely random. I did not expect this at all.
Right. They're like, they talked about it after the fact. There was nothing like leading up to it. It's just like, hey, with this update, you have to agree to us recording your party chat in order to utilize party chat. And it's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And like with no reasoning behind it at all. Like, no fine print, no nothing.
It's a very baffling decision by Sony because, like you said, this was completely random and just dropped. Yeah. So I don't know what Sony was thinking with this decision, and it's going to be very interesting with the launch of the PlayStation 5, how they go about this going forward.
I think
I just want to know.
Sorry, Neil. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Spoon.
Go ahead. Ask your question first.
No, I just don't understand. And again, in the future, if we get more information on it, more knowledge of the why, like I don't understand why they would do it in the first place. It just like what do they gain from it? Like what are the positives from it? Like what are they using it for? You know what I mean? Is it for liability reasons? Is it like there's so many unknowns. There's no I don't know.
So what it is the users are able to record the party chat and submit it to Sony for moderation. Basically, if someone's being toxic online, then Sony reviews it, and then they may end up suspending that account or outright blocking it. But a lot of reasons people are pushing towards that is because there are some countries that are starting to adapt laws and stuff like that to kind of help moderate some of the chat and stuff. Bullying online does exist. I mean, you've probably seen it. You've probably seen it doing Twitch. I've had comments on my channel that have made fun of my weight. I mean, good luck making fun of my weight. You're not going to hurt my feelings any. You're not going to say anything I haven't said about myself. So have at it. But bullying happens.
Saying that I'm bald, it's like, fuck, man, that's all you got? Like, good God, like, come on.
Yeah. I mean, just, it is what it is. You can't upset me, but, it's like Shot says here, ever been on a Call of Duty lobby? Halo 3 back in the day was super awesome. I was watching a clip a while back ago, I just have to share this, but, I was watching a clip of someone talking at a party, and this guy goes, "I'm going to bend your mom over my knees, shave her ass hairs, roll it into a blot, and make you smoke it." So
like, checkmate. That's cool. I'm going to go get myself a glass of water. You have an awesome night.
Exactly. I mean,
like, what do you say to that?
You could leave the chat and not come back. Like, I don't get, I don't get this mentality. Oh, I'm being bullied online. I think it applies more to social media, constant harassers. But if you're sitting in a party chat and someone drops a racial slur, homophobic, whatever it may be, religious things, starts it, leave. You don't have to put up with that. Go play another game or go find another group of friends to play with.
Yeah.
The guy's an asshole.
Yeah, and I never could wrap my head around how, and still to this day, like, I don't know how people get their jollies off of, like, being so toxic or being so, like, childish. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy to me, especially in Twitch chats. Mm-hmm. People that will just bomb bots and it'll be something racial, it'll be something transphobic, it'll be something homophobic. It's like, dude, like, what do you get out of this?
Yeah.
If you're the bully, like, what are you getting from this?
I feel like people, because they're just an online username and they feel like, okay, I'm anonymous, nobody's gonna know who I am. I could say the most outlandish, crazy things, and there's no consequences. I feel like that's where a lot of it comes from.
I think 90% of it's trolling too. Like, I don't actually think most of these people out there are really like that. They just say shit just to get people riled up.
Get a reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, we're talking about putting racial slurs, homophobic, things like that. I mean, let's lay down the law right now. Nothing justifies doing that. It's like racism, especially. There's no reason anyone should be racist. It's just, it's stupid. But even going off of homophobic slurs and things like that, I hate it when people do that as well. And I realize we all come from different walks of life. Some of us are more religious than others. Some of us believe in God. Some of us don't. Some of us are more into some of the harder core religions. But no matter that, I mean, not to get religious and sappy on people, but if you believe in God, then God wouldn't make fun of people like that or encourage that behavior. So why do it?
Yeah, and again, it's just like we said, it's just to get a reaction out of somebody. Like, that's where they get their jollies. Mm-hmm. To be just such an asshole that you want to make somebody else's day, night, morning, whatever, miserable, and that's where you get your jollies. Like, that's how you have fun. Like, that's appealing to you. That makes you feel good, to like make somebody else feel bad. And that to me is fucking sad.
Yeah.
Like whether it's an insecurity in that person's life or whatever it may be, all down the rabbit hole we go. But it's like, if that's how you get off, like treating somebody else like shit just to get a reaction out of them, like an adverse reaction, it's sad, man, and it's unnecessary. It's totally unnecessary.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I did want to touch on something here. Shot 504 asked, how will this work with the consent laws, though? And I kind of got thinking about that, too, because, you know, you clearly go into a party chat. It said that your voice may be recorded, but I can see this going to court and somebody trying to fight this, you know, even though it's in Sony's terms of service, and how that would affect it. You guys got any thoughts on that?
I'm not too familiar on the exact laws, but I know in certain states it is illegal to unknowingly record somebody. So I'm not sure how this will play into Sony's update on recording party chats. So this will be very interesting to see how this plays out.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like I said, if I'm not mistaken, if you want to go into a party chat, you have to, I don't know if it's like every time, but you have to agree to having your audio recorded, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. There was an option that popped up. But I mean, you know, the thing is, it's interesting because, like, especially with a phone call as well, when you call something, you know, they're always having to say, you know, this is on a recorded line, which may be moderated or, you know, used for training purposes.
For training purposes or for whatever it may be.
Quality assurance, mumbo jumbo, you know.
Yeah.
There you go.
I mean,
Thank
I've worked
you, any fucking tech line.
I've worked in a call center before, so you know, I kind of they do use those for they do use those for those calls for coachings and things like that. Horrible job. Yeah. Absolutely hated it. Working for Direct TV, actually. Doing tech support for that, so that was brutal.
You got to do what you got to do, though, right?
Yeah, I lasted 8 months before I said, "Screw this shit, I'm done." But
good 8 months.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I think we'll kind of have to see what goes on from there. Just one of my biggest concerns, I guess they said that it'll be about the last 5 minutes of chat, and then like you can record like up to a certain amount and submit stuff. I wonder how much is going to be taken out of context too. You know?
Oh, most definitely.
So,
Tons.
and what does that do to your Sony account? Does that block you out of all of your games? You spent $2,000 on games. Well, shit, sucks to be you. Guess you can't play your games anymore.
That just makes me like less inclined to ever use the PS4 chat feature because I spent a lot of money on PSN, and just to think that can get taken away in a snap of the finger by something maybe I said out of context, and Sony won't care. They'll ban the account.
Yeah, exactly. Wait, it was 40 seconds total, 10 seconds before and 10 seconds after statement? Wow, I didn't realize it was that bad, but like you can't get context in 40 seconds total. There's no frickin' way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems borderline impossible.
I mean, I feel like, fine, if you want to do it, bar them from playing online, but don't take away their games. I don't know. That's a risky thing. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen right there, blocking someone out of there.
It's just so tough though, because like most games nowadays, there is some form of online feature that you need to be online to play it.
Well, I mean, even
like
updates.
That's like a business model now, almost.
Yeah. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, but that's there's lawsuits waiting.
Like, has Sony released any sort of response about it? Like, have they released a statement on anything involving it?
That's part of what Shot 504 was saying about the 40 seconds total. That was part of their statement that they said.
Okay.
They also made a statement about like when it first announced that they weren't going to be recording it, that they were going to have users to be able to record it. A lot of the fear was, I think people were thinking Sony was going to record this information and then actively listen into chats and be like, oh, well, you dropped you dropped an F word and yada yada this, and how dare you? Like, have you been in a chat room before? Have you realized how many people drop F-bombs all the time? Like,
especially if you're with close friends, obviously, there's gonna be some words flung around.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I agree. It's gonna open up a whole new can of worms. It really is. Like Shot said here, it's when
Shot says AIM group chats. Holy shit, man, that's taking me back. Yeah, for sure. Chat rooms, good grief.
Yeah. He was saying too, Discord, wonder what that's going to do if they're going to do the same moderation for voice chat. Like, I mean, all I can say. Sorry, give me a sec.
Yeah.
All right, that better?
Yep,
sounds good to me.
Weird. Never had a problem with this online before, but hey,
it's
what's
all right.
A podcast without technical issues?
Sure.
But back to, I mean, Discord managing it and stuff. I mean, it comes down to this, people. If you want to get away from the toxicity, just leave. You can't moderate the world to the point where everything's offensive or I'm offended, or I mean, people are just gonna have opinions. FBI joins the chat,
and there's snowflakes, man. You know what I mean? Like, there's people that are just so easily offended by things that I or anybody else here, it might just roll off your shoulder.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's part of online culture, and you can't regulate the internet to the point. You can't regulate the internet to the point where you just start censoring everything. Otherwise, we end up in 1984, and Thought Police and things like that. And
I just want that. That's for sure.
What was that?
None of us want a world like that book you just mentioned.
Oh, hell no. But,
I mean, 84, Ghostbusters came out in 84, if I'm not mistaken. Great movie.
Yeah.
Great era for cinema.
True.
Yeah, I mean, just, I don't know. Well, maybe we'll have more to talk on as this comes out and kind of sees what goes on, but, you haven't seen Ghostbusters Shot, you really need to. Great movie. But anyways, I think that pretty much covers that topic. I don't really have anything else to add. You guys?
No, and they'll like you said, there'll be more that'll come out, I'm sure, in future days, months, whatever. Just what exactly it entails, or like what the purpose of it is, that we could probably touch on at a later date.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's. Are you guys? You guys have anywhere you need to be?
Oh,
just
no,
right here with you.
I'm good.
Alrighty. So let's turn over the rest of the time. We'll take some questions from the chat and kind of go from there. So I'm gonna give that opportunity to let the chat start asking some questions, and it can be about any topic really, or if you want more details on some of the topics we covered, let us know. But I mean, so while they're doing that, what have you guys been playing? Waiting for some questions. What have you guys been playing recently? I've been playing a lot of Ys 8. That's kind of my main game that I'm playing right now. That's the last Ys
game.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, I hear great things about it. That's in the backlog as well.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely one of the best JRPGs this generation. No, it's been my goal to review all of the Ys games this year, so this is the last one I need to review before 9 comes out.
And when is 9 slated to release?
February, I think, sometime in February.
Oh, really?
I want to say the 19th.
So.
Yeah.
Hot damn.
I don't know if I should say this, but I may or may not be getting a code. I'm not sure yet.
Ooh. Let's go.
I'm hoping. I'm crossing my fingers. So, Neo.
Serge, what have you been playing, man?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. I've been playing a couple of things. I've actually been playing East Origins.
Okay.
I am. I think I beat the second major boss. I'm enjoying the game so far. I love the combat. I even love the old engine, like the old style graphics that, reminiscent of older JRPGs that I really love. And then I picked up Power Rangers Power of the Grid, which is a Marvel versus Capcom style fighter, and I just think that's pretty good.
Amazing. How is it?
It's not bad considering it's a lower budget game, but it's actually pretty good. They've been consistently updating the game with new characters. They added a story mode to the game. It's pretty good. It's not bad. Definitely way better than I thought it was going to be.
Is the Green Ranger in it? That's all I want to know.
Yes, and the White Ranger is a costume.
Yes, sign me up.
That sounds like
Check
a blast.
If you go back, so I'm sure you guys have seen the Power Rangers movie that came out in like 96, 97, somewhere around there. So I don't know about you guys. I loved it as a kid watching it because I loved Power Rangers. Sure. What young kid that wanted to take karate didn't love Power Rangers? If you go back and watch it now, bro, it is so cringy. It really is.
It has not held up well at all.
No.
Are we talking about Ivan Ooze? Is that the movie?
Oh, are we ever?
I remember that.
The CGI for the Megazords is the worst thing. It's so bad.
God, it was so good back then, though. As a kid, I was so naive.
Right? I loved it as a kid, but looking back, yeah.
Nostalgia can only go so far.
So I'm going to answer Shot 504's question real quickly, but he asked favorite Legend of Hero games, and this was directed towards me. I'll be honest, I've only played two. I've only played Trails of Cold Steel 1 and Trails of Cold Steel 2. And I'm going to have to go with Trails of Cold Steel 2. I liked them both, but there was so much at stake in Trails of Cold Steel 2 that I absolutely just enjoyed it. I thought its story was really good, loved its characters. I'm really looking forward to being able to return to the series, but once I started playing the East series, I couldn't put it down. Which is weird. I usually don't play games in a series back to back, but something about East made me do it.
That's not a bad thing, though.
No. It does have a lot of lore to it. I've realized that through the Trails series. I don't really want to say too much about Cold Steel with Neo here because there's
thank you
I
was like, please, my
it's hard because any way you slice the bread, even if you were to start talking about Trails in the Sky for me, there'd be things that would be spoiled for later games because I haven't played Trails either.
Yeah,
but it's hard because there's so much that the series crosses over in, and like you going into Trails of Cold Steel, you're going to have a lot more context behind some of the groups that pop up in those later games. Whereas I've already had those spoiled for me and kind of know things that are now going to be, I don't want to say quote unquote ruined, but they're not going to have the same impact that they would if I played through the Trails in the Sky games. But yet if I played through the Trails in the Sky games, things are going to be ruined from there. I mean, there's the whole Crossbell arc games as well, which the story of Cold Steel, without getting into spoilers, the story of Cold Steel and the Crossbell arc, or the Ao no Kaseki and Zero no Kaseki, they're going parallel. The events are happening at the same time. So, it's you play one game, you're going to spoil the other. It's kind of hard to think.
Maybe you'll be pleasantly surprised, and it'll be like a Tarantino movie. You're going to find out the ending in your Trails of Cold Steel playthrough, and then you'll play Trails in the Sky, and you'll be like, oh man, this is awesome. awesome.
Do you think, Shot asked, do you think that the trails of the Ao no Kiseki, Zero no Kiseki will get localized? I'm hoping so. I feel like that they are inevitably pushing towards that. And you know, East 9 comes out in February. We're having Cold Steel 4, I think, out this month
Tuesday.
sometime. Yeah, Tuesday. And you know, that leaves next year fall open, because they always seem to either release either early first quarter or in the summer with their games, or then they always have that big one at fall. So I'm kind of thinking that there's going to be a release in fall. I think it's too soon for Hajimari no Kiseki to come out, or Trails in the Beginnings, I think is what it roughly translates to. But I think that's too far, or yeah. So I don't think we'll see that. So I'm kind of hoping we'll get that announcement that they will be dropping next year, the Crossbell arc.
That goes back to what we talked about earlier in the night too, about how like emulation right now for older titles is or stuff that's like not been localized. I feel like it's super important, because if you want to play the Crossbell games, like, you can emulate them.
Yeah. I mean, they even have ways you can actually, what's cool about that is they have ways you can actually support Falcom and go and buy the games in Japan, and then like use like this interface called GeoForant or something, I think and it translates the games.
Oh.
So that's kind of cool. I haven't done it yet just because I don't know how I don't know how Japanese currency kind of works, and you know, translating that over American and all that. But yeah,
us Americans just ruined language. Sorry, gang. Sorry, world. We fucked it up for everybody.
Actually, that's something I really want to see, is Falcom release more of their library. Have you guys ever heard of it?
Can I get a Lunar and a Lunar 2 port to PC, please, for the love of God?
Yes, let's do it.
I know it's not, because I don't think it's technically under the Falcom moniker, but like, please, like, just give me Lunar and Lunar 2 on PC.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, God, 2 of my favorite older JRPGs I've ever played. The gameplay, the aesthetics, the story. It's so good. I loved it.
I need to play those. I never have.
I still have them in a shoebox.
I'll tell you why too. The price. So I will play them.
But the collector's edition of the Silver Star Story Complete, and it came with it was like a cloth map of the region, and who's the main antagonist? Galleon, right? I believe was his name. And it came with it was like a little puppet that you would like hold the stick underneath him, and he had like it was like a Rock'em Sock'em Robots action. You could like punch both hands. It made no sense, but I was just psyched that I got it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
they're great games. If you can find a way to play them, if they don't ever get ported elsewhere, like, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I'm gonna play Lunar for the channel, but sorry guys, I'm gonna emulate it. I'm gonna play those any way I can.
He's gonna I can't blame you. It's not TOS violation. He's playing it legit.
Yeah.
Let's just be clear, Internet. He's playing it legitimately. My client misspoke.
Yeah, I'm playing it legitimately. You know, like.
Yeah. There we go.
I have a friend who has the disc. I'm going to use RetroArch to, you know.
Yeah, he's going to let me borrow it.
Yeah. But Shot asked, what do you think of Diablo 4 supposedly going back to Diablo 2 roots? I mean, I'm for it. I liked Diablo 2 back in the day. That was a blast.
Dude, I didn't hate Diablo 3, but I could see like why fans of Diablo 2, like hardcore fans of Diablo 2, didn't necessarily gravitate towards it like completely, but like I thought it was a good game. I liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun.
I didn't hate it either. I thought it was good too. I thought it was I put in quite a few hours in 3 with friends as well, but I don't know. I guess it's nostalgia speaking for Diablo, because I wasn't allowed to play mature rated video games, but that was kind of the one that I always snuck off and played with my cousin.
Nice.
So, yeah. Actually, I'm kind of curious, Neo. I'm going to ask you. We discussed this in our first episode last week, but what's some Japanese RPGs you'd love to see be remade? I mean, like, I'm talking like, full-scale Final Fantasy VII being rebuilt from the ground up with modern graphics.
So off the top of my head, I can think of two, and I'm going to give both of them and just a brief reason as to why. Legend of Dragoon, because
yes.
I loved that game, start to finish, characters, the whole shebang. And if they remade it in a way like the Final Fantasy VII remake, I am on board. But I would also like to see Chrono Trigger. But I don't want it to get the Final Fantasy VII remake, because I feel like the turn-based gameplay of it is perfect. Like, how that game plays to me is amazing. So if they could do some form of just like a graphical facelift or something like an HD remaster, maybe not like a full-fledged remake like 7 got, I would be on board 100%.
I think replicating Chrono Trigger with the style of Dragon Quest XI would lend itself very well.
Hold on, you're breaking up again, Spoons.
Okay.
Graphics, audio, video. Am I right, internet?
Yeah. But
it's always got to be an experience, an all-encompassing experience.
Yeah. All right. So what I was saying, Dragon Quest XI doing Chrono Trigger in the style of that, I think would lend itself very well to the game.
I would love that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh God, that would be such an eye boner in so many ways. Like, it looks so good. I would absolutely love that.
You know what company I think should handle a remake of Chrono Trigger though? Tokyo RPG Factory.
Absolutely.
Like, I really think, like, they're building up to some really great things, and I don't think their games are bad, but they haven't hit that stride that other Japanese RPGs are doing. I mean, they're solid games, and I feel like they're learning with each game. But I think they really need that push of just that, project to...
Dude, shot, maybe not Paper Mario, but I would also take a Mario RPG full-scale remake.
Hell yeah, that needs a remake. That needs a...
Oh my god, that would be incredible.
Like, let's go. I'm in.
Remake
What's that, you
it?
need a pinky? That's cool, dude. I can lift one.
Remake
God,
it?
it would be so good.
And then do a sequel. But put all the Nintendo characters in there, like this big old crossover with Nintendo characters.
Yeah, let's just take all of the characters, well, maybe not all, most of the characters from Super Smash and just, like, make Mario RPG.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Make it like a Trails-esque kind of series, and just like 8 or 9 games deep. Like, let's just go.
So what would you guys...
Nintendo's enough material to make that happen too.
Yeah. I want them to remake Xenogears. Like, do the graphical style. And like, what pisses me off is they're in a perfect, well, I don't want to say pisses me off, but they're in a perfect position to do it. Make it a Switch exclusive and have Square Enix and Nintendo and Monolith all work together to get this done.
Oh my god, that would be amazing.
That would be great, and I would dust off my Switch for sure.
Yeah, but I think another game I would love to see remade, Final Fantasy Tactics, but done in the style of not like gameplay style, but like the artistic style of Valkyria Chronicles. I really think that cell shaded would add to that.
That would be an interesting mix.
Yeah,
I could definitely see that.
Because with the War of the Lions port they did for the PSP, I always thought those are really beautiful. I'd like to see them use that actually, but make the entire game out of it.
I just wish Square would make another one in general. Me, I would probably.
I know there's a lot.
Honestly, I would love to see my favorite Final Fantasy get the 7 treatment, and that'd be 6.
Oh God, yes.
That'd be cool.
Kefka.
Oh my, that would be the best.
Oh my gosh,
there's just so much possibilities they can do with the graphics, the story, gameplay mechanics, everything.
Well, and 6 is one of those. Sorry, go ahead, Serge.
Oh no, I was gonna say, and the music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Uematsu, you are my hero.
Yes. That man is an absolute genius. Like, the only other composer I think I like better than him is Yasunori Mitsuda. But
really good.
I mean, if we're talking in terms of quality and going down as a legend, it's Uematsu. I think the only other composer that could ever rival Uematsu would be Koji Kondo from Nintendo.
Yeah, he's just put out countless hit after hit with all these different Nintendo franchises he's worked on.
Shot says, please play Trails of Cold Steel 3. I will. I need to do that. But so
the game is like Avengers Infinity War with Trails of Cold Steel 4 being endgame. That's what people compare it to. Damn,
yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That grand of scale? That's wild.
I mean, it kind of brings a lot of characters together from the other arcs too, from my understanding. So
see, so it's like now, so like I was in the midst of playing catch up in Final Fantasy 14, and I got to right before patch 5.3 dropped, which wasn't it wasn't an expansion, but from what people have told me without spoilers, it might as well have been an expansion. It was very vast. There was a lot of meat on the bone, and I had to hop around social media like Twitter and Instagram and to like not see spoilers. And now that's what's going to happen with Trails of Cold Steel 4 coming out. I'm going to have to like dance around like I'm Patrick Swayze in Dirty Dancing. And it's like, okay, so now I can't, like, I got to be like super conservative with how focused I am on my feed and my timeline because I don't want spoilers.
Yeah. That sucks.
It always does, but it's okay. I'll survive. I'll get through it.
Taking a week off for the release. Nice. So, yeah, I don't know. I'd like to see more games just kind of ported over, to be honest.
Yep.
So
like
that's
even
kind
if
of,
they didn't get a full-fledged remake or remastered, yeah, just port it over, and I'll be
something
content.
so they're not forgotten in the shuffle. Yeah, like we said earlier, these games are really expensive.
Developers, Steam exists, use it.
Yeah.
Use it. So
please.
The other, if Atlas can port Persona 4 Golden over to Steam, you can port some of these older games over to Steam, and it'll sell.
I guess Atlas just doesn't like money, apparently.
Atlas doesn't like a lot of things. Nah, I like Atlas though. Port over Persona 3. That would be.
Dude, I'll take that. That would be great.
That's a difficult one to do though, because there's no definitive way to play that.
I would say port it over, but add the features of the PSP version to it.
It's not that easy, because you take a look at the way that Persona 3 is structured. You've got Persona 3 on the PlayStation, or the Persona 3 FES version, which allows the main character to run around town and in through school. And then you've got the PSP version, which takes that away and gives you a cursor that you move around.
I mean, it was
so
basically
if they were to do that,
game aside from the dungeons,
either way they'd have to do that. I mean, if they were to do it, they'd have to go in and remake the model of the female protagonist to be able to run around the same way that the other character did.
It may not necessarily be the most difficult thing. It's just I don't feel like Atlas would do it.
Yeah.
But that I guess the problem, which is unfortunate because I would love to see that come out in some form.
Yeah, I don't know. You played the Persona games, Neo?
I have not. I've heard really good things about 4 and 5. I know people that have played like 5, the Royale edition. They say they're really good, and eventually I'll probably add it to my backlog to at some point in the future before I die get through and play them.
Right.
That's a game you have to commit yourself to. I think
they are long games.
Well, and that's what I'm doing with like the Trail series, dude. Like there's so many, and I'm committed to getting through all of them. So like playing anything other than a Falcom Trails game right now is literally going to be distant future.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, like, Falcom's not slowing down with the Trails games though either. That's they're going to be releasing those, they say, for another 10 years.
That's amazing.
And they're all going to be connected.
That's so cool. I love that in so many ways.
Yeah. It's gonna be interesting to see how they pull that off, but like all of the lore is it's all connected. So
damn. Somebody like myself who's just playing through it for the first time, it's like, holy crap, there's so much to take in.
That's part of the reason I don't think I've started the other ones yet, is because they're such huge games, and it's just like, frick, the amount of time I have to put into them. And like, they're not short games either. They're like 60, 70 hour RPGs.
Yeah.
And, the last year when I played through them, I beat those first 2. And I mean, it took me a good 3 months to get through them all, or both of them. So 6 months total.
Man, oh man. But for me, like that's just a ton of content that I'll be able to use to create. You know what I mean? So I'm good with it, so long as the story's good, which it has been. Again, it just slowly starts to open up. I'm just playing through Trails in the Sky right now, so meeting new characters, new areas, new events, and it's totally different too in terms of like UI and the battle system compared to like a Final Fantasy entry or something along those lines. You know what I mean? Like orbments and stuff like that. It's everything is just so new to me. There's so much to experience.
Yeah. But I don't know. There's so much there's so much left to do with that franchise. It's crazy. I don't think I've ever seen a company do what Falcom's doing with it.
I'm good with it too. Like I said, I'm enjoying it, and I'm the type of person that if I'm not enjoying it, like I'm not going to fake it for content creating purposes on Twitch. Like I'm not going to play it. Like that's how I am. You know what I mean? Like my time to play games is very limited as it is. So if it's something that I'm not going to enjoy, or if I'm not enjoying it, I'm not going to like slog through it. Like that's no fun for me.
Yeah, they're all moving on to something you're going to enjoy playing,
Yeah, or even just try something, like try a new game that I might enjoy, you know what I mean? As opposed to just sitting there like pulling teeth.
I think I'm going to jump into Cold Steel 3 after I finish Legend of Legaia. That seems to be the the game that's winning everybody's vote for my Twitch debut. So
Legaia was a phenomenal game.
It was. I've played it back in the day, but it's been over 10 years ago. Hell if I remember anything.
Yeah. Now, so, if I can ask both of you guys separately, what is in your opinion, the golden age of RPGs?
Ooh,
it doesn't have to be like a time frame. You can give a console generation. How's that? If that's a little bit easier.
Oh, it's easy for me. It's easily the Super Nintendo and PS1 era. Like nothing for me will ever beat that.
Okay.
There's just been so many timeless games I revisit, and I still have fun with it like I played it for the first time.
I think for me, I'd have to go with PS1, PS2 era. There was a lot of PS2 RPGs I really enjoyed as well.
Right on.
So,
What would you say?
I'm gonna go with you, Serge. It's that Super Nintendo PS1 era. Like, I feel that there's just umpteen titles that are just, like you said, I could go back and play it again right now, and it'll still feel fresh. It'll still feel like something I'm playing for the first time.
mm-hmm. And see, I like these Super Nintendo RPGs as well. I haven't played very many of them because I got into RPGs. Well, Final Fantasy IX was my first RPG, which was I was 12 when I got into that, and I kind of started playing them. And now that I've gotten older, I kind of have like this urge to go back and play some of the other ones that I've missed.
Amazing.
So,
yeah, I couldn't recommend it more.
I mean, I've played all the Final Fantasies from Super Nintendo. I've played Chrono Trigger. I've played bits and pieces of Secret of Mana.
Did you ever play Chrono Cross?
That's my favorite game of all time.
Oh man, that soundtrack slaps. I haven't played it in so long, but that's something I want to go through and play again too.
Yeah. Actually, here's the thing. I want to review that for the channel, but I'm nervous to, because I'd have to turn on my critique eye, and I don't want to do that where it's my favorite game of all time.
Sometimes it's hard to go and look at some of your favorite games and have a critical point of view, because you don't want to tear down your favorite game, but at the same time it's like you
have to as a reviewer.
Exactly.
We've got a question again from Shot, and he asks, do you think newer game releases are becoming sort of stale?
Like, I feel we're in the BR era. Oh, I definitely agree. I feel like a lot of new titles that come out, there's always some form of like BR element attached to it.
What does he mean by BR?
Battle Royale.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like a game like Fortnite kind of paved the way for that. Like, the success that Epic had with that, other developers were like, yo, we got to hop on board. Like, we can do a BR of our own. We might not come close to touching what Epic has done with Fortnite, but we can do our own thing, carve out our own path, and it could be a very lucrative opportunity for us.
Look at games like Tetris 99. That's the one of the last games.
And that came out of nowhere too.
Yeah,
it's a Tetris BR. People were like, what? Like, how do you make Tetris a BR? And it's like, I mean, I don't know how, but they did it.
They pulled it off somehow. I was blown away.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the battle royale's the new zombies. Everybody had to have zombies back in the day.
Yeah.
Rather than doing something great with survival horror, oh, let's throw zombies in there. Now, why not try to do something unique and different?
Yeah. Like, I don't mind zombies, but I'm not like a super fanatic of like zombie related content. You know what I mean? Like, I can't take a steady diet of it personally.
For me, it's
but
only
I know a lot
been
of people that
like
love
the
it.
Resident Evil franchise. That's really the extent of my zombie love.
Yeah, that's about it for me too. That and like a little bit of The Walking Dead. I haven't watched anything in a long time, but I just feel like that in itself is a really saturated market, like zombies. Zombie.
See,
yeah, definitely.
And this is probably going to be an unpopular opinion, but I really feel like Twitch in general has kind of hurt the gaming industry in some ways, or at least how developers try to make games, because there's this. Take a look at Fortnite. Everybody's streaming Fortnite. They just keep adding new stuff to it, and it does its own advertising. People play Fortnite. more and more people go and buy the stuff for it. Whereas take a look at a game like, we used God of War as an example on the PlayStation 4. Someone streams that, it's one and done. Time to move on to the next thing. There's no reason to really go back. So, you know, I think these companies are starting to drive their ambitions. Let's make something that's going to be as popular, or people are going to stream. But I think they've kind of realized that you can't always replicate a formula that's successful and get new people to come in.
I would agree, for sure.
You know, there's instances where, you know, old games are becoming extremely popular on Twitch. You know, such as Among Us, that game what came out maybe like 2 years ago or something like that, and now it's like one of the most.
Oh, it's been out that long?
I thought it was brand new.
No,
I thought it was brand new too.
They were actually working on a sequel, but then they decided, since it blew up in popularity, they went back to the original and just enhanced it and tried to make it a better game.
Oh wow!
So how it came out of left field, in my opinion. Like, who sparked that trend or sparked that reinvigoration, if you will, for a game that's been out that long?
It must have been the right Twitch streamer that had enough of a viewership to really make the game blow up. I'm actually looking it up right now. It came out June 15th, 2018.
Huh. Interesting.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it had been out that long.
Kind of interesting to see, because you just never know with older games that could just randomly blow up on Twitch. And I guarantee it, future games that come out may be inspired from Among Us and do their own take on what that game offers.
Yeah, true.
I mean,
Wow,
kudos to them being able to do that, make a game. You know, that's cool.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's what? It's like $5, $6
Yeah.
on Steam.
And free on mobile.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hey, we should buy Among Us and do a stream. That'd be fun.
Yeah, actually, I've been low-key curious to try it.
Unpopular opinion, I'm not into that game, and I'm not into like Fall Guys. Like, I know they're incredibly popular right now, but they just don't do it for me. Like, it doesn't wiggle, not even a little bit. Like, I have zero interest in them. I'll watch people play them, because I think a game like Among Us, it just shows the future sociopaths, liars, and murderers of the world honing their craft. Jokingly, it's a joke, guys. You guys can't see me, but you know what I mean. Like, they're honing skills of deceit and lying, and it's like, yeah, I don't know. Like, it's funny to watch, but I don't have an interest in playing it personally.
Honestly, like, what made me kind of interested just to try it, because I love the Danganronpa franchise, and I love the idea of a class trial and voting out who the killer is. So that's really the only reason why I would want to try it.
Yeah, Danganronpa's good.
Yeah, I love Danganronpa.
I don't think Twitch has hurt it as much as the community streamers have, building the popular games and the ads you see nowadays. Kids nowadays are monkey see, monkey do. Yeah, Panda for sure, dude.
Exactly. But
Neo is sus. Scott, how dare you?
I don't know. I'll try Among Us. I actually had to stop playing Fall Guys. I played that game for 8 hours straight.
Wait, what was it? I'm sorry.
Fall Guys. I played it for 8 hours straight.
Really?
Yeah.
You know what? It's free on PSN, so I gave it a try.
That was me. Yeah.
Yeah. It's okay, you know.
Like, I guess for me, I love 3D platformers. So when you gave me this option to play against other people and online competitive in a 3D platformer, I'm like, oh frick yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, like I try, like I know a lot of people that played both of those games, and it's just, yeah, I don't know, man. It's just I don't have any interest in it. I'll watch you guys play it. I'll watch buddies play it, but for me, yeah.
So Shot goes, no talk on Genshin Impact. Like, I'll just say Genshin Impact is going to revolutionize the video game industry.
definitely looks so pretty. I have it downloaded, and again, I have a huge amount of Legend of Heroes games to get through, so I haven't even opened the client.
Like, I don't know if I want to try it. I just like there's some things about that game. Just I don't know.
You know, I feel like I should download it. I mean, it's free, and I should play just to consider it for when I do make my Game of the Year video, just so I can have like, all right, I play this. And it's free. I really have no reason not to at least try it.
Yeah, I mean, it's free to play. It's an MMO. I love MMOs, so long as they're done well. Like, I know WoW was like the MMO of MMOs, but WoW for me got really stale after a lot of time put into it when games like Star Wars The Old Republic came out, Final Fantasy XI came out, and now Final Fantasy XIV Online. It's just, those ones grab me so much more.
Yeah.
I think part of it too is because Genshin Impact, at least for me, it's built like a mobile game. It still has those gacha mechanics, those things to kind of halt your progression, and I hate games like that. I hate having to wait to move on.
Now, what do they do in terms of halting your progression?
One of the YouTubers I was watching was talking like you kind of still have that, like you have to have so much energy to do something. So like once you kind of get there, you kind of either have to pay.
Interesting. And by energy, you mean like your character's energy? Like, is it like an experience based? Is that what you mean by the energy?
I think so. I don't really know. I just
okay.
I haven't played it myself. Just I don't know. It seemed like when there's always this stigma when something, at least for me, when something has a free tag on it, I just kind of avoid it because it's like, oh great, microtransactions and halting progression, and like that's why I don't play mobile games.
The worst if it's something that's free.
Exactly.
I'm like, no, there's a catch. Like this can't. There's got to be something there. If it's free, like what's the catch? What's the fine print?
It says, so if you go into Shot says if you go into a dungeon, it consumes energy points, and energy points regenerate over a certain period of time.
So you go into a dungeon, you lose all your energy points, and then you're tapped out. You can't progress, and you just basically have to call it a night, or just wait for your energy points to regenerate. Shot.
Oh, he says Soul Workers does that, not
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, I don't know. I guess that's an interesting question. Super Derek RPG. I don't know if you guys know who that is or not, but he actually asked a question the other day. What would it take to get you to play more games on a mobile device, like your phone?
Jeez.
Not much. I play like little, I don't know, dude. Like I have, it's some like home run derby smash, or I have this game called True Skate where it's like you basically have a fingerboard, but it's on your phone, and they're quick little like, okay, pop it on for like 2 minutes, and then it's like, okay, I'm over it. Like I'm done. I can just shut it down, and it's like no problem.
I don't think there's really anything that could persuade me to really consider playing mobile games like a hardcore way. I don't know. It just doesn't appeal to me.
I think if they were to release them, what would it take for me? They'd have to release them at a base price, like $15, $20, and put them on the damn store and just let me buy them. But actually put time and development into them. Don't make them cash grabs.
Yeah, because I feel like that's what most mobile games are. It's like, oh, you timed out, but if you pay $1, you can resume. It's I don't know. I have yet to really play a mobile game where they don't try to rub microtransactions in your face.
I mean, Diablo Immortal kind of really showed the gap between, people who play like consoles and PC versus mobile.
Yeah.
That was one of the like most glaring events of like this past decade. Like wow, like Blizzard just got shot down hard by its fan base on that.
Yeah.
Love the guy that acts, and this is like an April Fool's joke.
I love it. Dude.
You know,
You
the
can
thing
find it
is,
on
like,
YouTube, he talks about it.
so many journalists and stuff about that, like, too, like, went to Blizzard's defense. This is offensive that someone would say this. I'm like, this is freaking awesome. Is this an early
it's
April
perfect
Fool's
because
joke?
that's what everybody was thinking.
Yeah.
So wait a minute. And then when he asked if it was going to be at any point in time ported to PC, and they were like, no. And it's like,
Yeah.
what? Like,
You guys
Diablo
all
has
have
always
phones.
been on PC.
Or don't you guys have phones, was it?
They handled that whole event poorly. Once they got hit with, like, the hard questions, they handled it very, very poorly. I didn't think it was a good look for them.
No, not at all.
Definitely not.
Not at all. R.I.P. Blizzard. May you rest in peace.
Yeah.
Maybe they can pull themselves out. I mean, don't you think it's time
Didn't,
Blizzard makes World of
some
Warcraft
of the key
too?
people leave Blizzard. They're gonna like open their own studio.
Mm-hmm. Oh, frick. I
Didn't
remember hearing
I
about
read
that,
something
yeah.
Where I'm breaking up.
It's... What was that? You there, Serge?
Hello?
We can hear you.
Hello?
There we
Can you
go.
hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I was just saying, didn't some key people leave Blizzard recently, and they're opening their own studio?
Yeah, it was a combination of some of the guys from BioWare and Blizzard.
Oh, whoa.
Like old
interesting.
school BioWare and Blizzard. Before the Mass Effect Andromeda days.
I'm expecting good things from them. You know, they don't have to worry about, I guess, the big corporate head interfering with their, I guess, development process.
Yeah.
I could never get into the Mass Effect games, admittedly. And I say that, and then I loved Star Wars: The Old Republic. Like, I don't know. I couldn't get into the Mass Effect games. It didn't do it for me.
The first one is kind of hard to play. It's a very janky and buggy mess, but I think going forward with Mass Effect 2, it's a very solid, more polished game. And then we have Mass Effect 3 with the controversial ending.
Oh yeah, Andromeda.
And yep, Andromeda. That game is yikes.
Andromeda is
Not good.
another one of those examples where it's just like the writing was kind of like it was clearly handled by a team that didn't understand what they were doing. And they had no respect for the lore. Like, oh, how do I say this? Mass Effect Andromeda is a game I feel that put politics before an actual story, and it undid some of the game's lore to try to fit those in.
Yeah.
Like the biggest one, they put in a female Krogan as one of the main ambassadors. But if you knew anything about Krogan lore, and it kind of makes me mad that they did this, that wouldn't have happened. If there was a female in with the Krogan, that was pretty much they were pretty much worshipped. They were kept they were kept out of everything because they didn't want them dying because they couldn't because of something that happened in the series. They couldn't produce offspring.
Yeah, that's right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it just in case you ever do give it another chance. But
Yeah, but I mean, just to throw that aside for lore reasons and be like, oh, well, we're gonna have this female Krogan, and I don't know if that was politically driven. That's just something that's always bugged me. It's like the developers didn't do their research or even play the other games before making it.
thing I could really think of, maybe for that reason, is maybe there was a large amount of time that passed, and maybe their ideals changed, but like,
Well,
can't say that for sure.
even so, like that wasn't. They left the galaxy. They left the galaxy like right towards the end of Mass Effect 3.
Right.
So that the genophage hadn't even been cured by then, or at all, depending on your choices.
Yeah, you're right.
So it just doesn't make sense. this is geared towards chat, but I figure we can answer. We can probably close out with this question: what upcoming games or what are any of you in chat interested in coming up, or a game that you've been playing in your backlog? I've been playing East 8. As for a game I'm looking forward to, my big game this year I'm looking forward to is Cyberpunk 2077. I think that's my big one.
Serge, how about you?
I feel like I'm swimming in just games that I still need to play, but one that I can think of, I want to get into the next entry of the Super Robot Wars franchise. I'm sorry, not the next entry. One of the older games that I picked up recently. It's an interesting turn-based tactical mech shooter. It's pretty good.
Okay.
What about you?
Probably. So I'm really interested in the 7 remake part 1's port to PC. I really want to play it on PC. I'm interested in part 2 whenever that comes out, and 16, aside from like my back catalog to play through. Like,
yeah,
it's something. There's something, and I've grown up my entire life playing video games on a console. It wasn't until I built my second PC a couple years back that I really started diving into PC gaming, and it hits different playing a game on PC. And this kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier in terms of like graphics and like refresh rates and stuff like that and frames per second. Like, things look so freaking crispy on a PC. Even older games like that are ported to PC, I love how they look on PC. So I'm really looking forward to playing those few games on a PC. It can, like, with a controller, more likely than not, but
yeah.
It's something I'm most certainly looking forward to.
Yeah. The Harry Potter RPG shop brought up, and I want to see more from that. That sounds like a good idea. So
I would most certainly be interested in seeing more about it. I've never seen a Harry Potter movie, but I would still give it a shot.
Yeah, I grew up reading the books, read all the books, watched the movies, so Harry Potter's kind of my Star Wars. I'm kind of one of those people that you can have a casual conversation with about Harry Potter, and I'll be like, oh, did you know? So
yeah, I'm curious in trying it. It does look pretty good.
Yeah. Elden Ring. I've never gotten much into the Dark Souls games before. I don't have the patience to learn.
I gotta say though, once you defeat a boss, it's like one of the most satisfying things in gaming.
Oh frick yeah! I played the OG Demon Souls back in the day, right? And
yeah.
I beat the first boss. I walked away. I'm like, well, guys, I think I'm done. I beat the final boss of the game. I'm good. Like I felt that same accomplishment when you feel like you beat the game. You know, when you beat a game, you're like the satisfaction of, oh, I finished a game. I felt that way at that game's first boss. So I have tried Sekiro. Oh boy.
I gotta play that. I still have my copy sealed. I gotta try that when I have time.
I don't enjoy dungeon crawlers.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I don't know. It's another one of those things that just kind of never really did it for me. They look really neat, and I love the violence and stuff like that. Like, as sick as it sounds to say, but yeah, I don't know. I just could never get into it myself personally.
I wouldn't recommend starting with Persona 3 then.
Oh, really?
Play Persona 4 or 5 first and then ease into it. I mean, Persona 3 breaks up the monotony, but you really only have one dungeon you climb up. And there's a plot reason that they did that, so it's integrated into the story, and it's really, really cool. but there's more variety to the levels in Persona 4 and 5.
I feel like each of the games going forward, they definitely improved the variety in the dungeons.
I would definitely. Sorry, go ahead, Serge.
No, I was just saying 5 does it the best so far.
Mm-hmm. I feel like if I'd still say play Persona 3 because you may end up liking it. Just if dungeon crawler, you have a problem with dungeon crawlers, 3's not going to be the best representation to be your first.
They just look so hard, and I feel like that would ruin the whole experience for me.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
But again, that's just me. like Shot said in chat, different strokes, different folks, you know?
That game made Dark Souls look like a Younglings versus Anakin from Revenge of the Sith. Talking about Sekiro.
That's awful.
Ooh, boy. Well,
oh, dear.
I think that's gonna do it, guys. Thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure to have you, Neo. Thank you for joining us. It was fun.
It was very fun. Thank both of you and Spoons for reaching out and having me on. It was a great experience, and it's something that I was really hyped on all week. You know what I mean? Like I was excited to do it, and I would love to come back anytime, man.
Oh yeah, I'd love to have you back on. So, what's next? I try to shoot to do these about once a month, so it just kind of depends on getting everybody together because work and schedules and life, if just everything gets in the way. But that's the plan. I do plan on streaming them on Twitch and then uploading them to my YouTube channel for listening later on. So I'll probably get working on that tonight and get that ported over. I'll add some music into the background when I put it on YouTube as well. So
awesome.
But anyways, it's thank you again for returning, Serge.
Thanks for having me back. It was nice to meet you, Neo. I had a great time.
Serge. Great conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Looking forward to the next one.
Likewise, guys.
Next time we get him on, hopefully we can get some of the rest of the crew on there and get some good discussions going. Have a couple of other people want to bring on too, so we shall see. But I'm gonna go ahead and close this one out. So like what you see, give us a follow. Check out everybody's channel. I'll leave a description if you're watching this on YouTube to Neo Matter's channel and Serge's channel, so you guys can check those out. And most importantly, guys, stay happy, be happy, game happy. Bards of the Roundtable podcast is checking out.